All right, guys. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Results Loading Podcast hosted by Prosperous AI. I'm your host, Michael Atkin, and today I'm absolutely thrilled to have with us Hamzah Shanbari, Director of Innovation at the Haskell Company. Hamzah has dedicated his career to driving transformation in the construction industry, leveraging technologies that make projects safer, faster, and smarter. From advanced modeling to VR applications, he's on the forefront of construction tech and is continuously pushing the boundaries of what is possible. I will look forward to letting him tell you more about all of this himself. But with all that being said, Hamzah, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We're really looking forward to this one.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I'm looking forward to this one.
Absolutely, Hamzah. So diving right in here. Let's start at the beginning a little bit. Can you share a little bit about what drew you to the intersection of construction and technology? You have extensive expertise and experience in both. Was there a particular moment that sparked your passion for innovation in this field? Kind of talk us through how we got to this point.
Yeah, so it all goes back to dealing with pain points, right? So we worked for a while as kind of like an owner's rep from the owner side, helping stand up in a lot of these bank branches and different premises for a bank. And the communication with the GCs, the different GCs, the different designers that were running these projects is just painful, right? So part of it is me kind of wanting to find a better way to review designs, to communicate progress, to actually be on top of these projects that I'm in charge of. But also part of it is me trying to kind of find a different way by saying, all right, let me kind of hit pause here on this construction world and let me go back to academia and see what's going on. Because I know the academic world always is like ahead of the curve in a sense that, you know, it's not really boots on the ground, but it's like research that are out there. So that's what drove me back to go to academia and kind of like try to see what's happening in the forefront of research. And that's what kind of got me super excited. This is like back in 2008, 2009 about like BIM and VDC processes and what else we can do with it and digital layout stuff. So that's kind of how my journey started with that, is like it's part of, you know, dealing with pain points, and part of it means starting to look about, let me go see what's out there first.
Totally. And pain points forcing you to innovate, right? Because it's so important, especially in the construction space. And you can speak to this better than me for sure. It's been an industry that's been behind in technology by about 5-10 years at least, right? Yeah. So there's a huge demand and requirement for innovation, especially on the technological front. Can you talk us a little bit about the technology and the opportunities that have really landed at your feet, especially in the last couple of years versus what was maybe available when, you know, your genesis, if you will, in 2008 that you just described? Talk to us about the transition and the innovation that you've seen in the technology world that construction industry is now able to harness.
Man, the sky is the limit these days, man. It's the construction tech ecosystem is just continuing to expand on a daily basis. So there's so much opportunities, but actually going back, I want to go back to kind of like the basis of things, right? Because you have to have your foundations right? You can't implement all of this amazing stuff. So we talk about like AI, talk about robotics and automations and all of that stuff. You can't get to that point if you don't have your foundations right, if you don't have the right tech stack, the right way to harness data, the right way to structure them and look at them and find the insights, and that what drives the automation. So going back to like BIM and VDC processes, right, is like understanding how do we make sure that this model is the main source of communication between all the different parties, right, throughout the life cycle of a building. And then making sure that we're not only harnessing that data from said BIM model, because again, that's going to be like your central point where all the information from the design side that's going to the field, and from the field coming back to the design. But also there's so much more data that comes out of that, right? So any RFIs, any like sensor data, anything really, you can structure that in a way that, how do you harness that? Where do you store it? How do you store it? How do you structure it? And then you get to the new wave of technologies with AI and what can really unlock for us in terms of like something as simple as finding information quickly. Something as simple as that, it's like, wait a minute, what happened to that specific, AHU unit that we ordered 3 months ago that had a lead time of 70 days? Where is it? Right. And it's stuff like that you can get to it. You're going to spend some time. You're going to look at documentation. You're going to try to find that information. But now with the AI is really going to help us unlock that and find information much, much faster and have it be actionable as well. So you can take that action on that much, much faster than before.
When getting those quick insights, and then especially in the construction industry, you tell me how many components goes into a building, hundreds of thousands, half a million. This data's got to be tracked somewhere. And sure, data scientists are great, but it could take them weeks to gather those insights and analytics and understand truly what your data is trying to tell you to make strategic decisions, for example. And now you put an AI overlay over everything and it's like, boom, quick insight. Where is my 70 AC units that had 70-day lead times are now on day 88? What's going on? Right. How do we make sure that these situations are being flagged? How can we leverage the technology so that it's not just living in Excel or the traditional ERP systems, for example, and that is helping us make those strategic decisions, giving us predictive analytics to help ensure that these projects go as smoothly as possible, especially when the data has the information. We just haven't been able to access it up until now because this is where the technology is.
Exactly. Yeah, you mentioned it, man. Predictive analytics and just forecasting in terms of progress or cost, or are we even going to hit our numbers? But also we're looking at technologies that can forecast, probability of incurring incidents on job sites, stuff like that. And actually kind of looking at the well-being of our workers on the job site and making sure that we are protecting them, being proactive on, jumping up and fixing things before they become an issue. So again, like the sky is truly the limit, man. It's like there's so much happening right now. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, no, it's tough. And the thing is, like, the construction industry, operation, supply chain, it is so primed for an AI technological revolution, if you will, because it's been living in the data, living in Excel. It's hard to access. You're not getting those quick insights. Again, God bless data scientists, but it can take weeks when you have 100,000 lines in Excel or Google Sheets, and those insights, by the time you get them, are weeks behind, and there's new data coming in, and it makes it quite difficult. But Hamzah, something you mentioned earlier in terms of predictive analytics, it's a really important point, a really great point, actually, and it kind of segues me into my next question regarding safety. And safety being such a critical component in construction, to your point. How are innovations like VR, 3D modeling, artificial intelligence contributing to improving safety standards on projects? I know you touched on it a little bit, but can we dive a little bit deeper into that topic specifically?
100%. So it starts with, I keep saying this every time, but a lot of people don't believe me. Like, it starts with design. Everything starts with design, right? Like, you're talking about like the earliest point in time in a project timeline. Before we even select a site, sometimes it's like just conceptually. There's this movement of, using AI, generative design, and all these stuff that can help us be efficient, right? And deliver the design faster. But also there's so much more you can do with that in terms of, checking the design for safety, for constructability in general, right? Is how are we going to build this? Where are the cranes going to go? Where the scaffolding is going to go? How much of the work that we're going to put in place is in over high places? Stuff like that can really highlight way early to our safety team about, here's a design that's coming. Here are what risks associated with that design. And we can automate a lot of that stuff, right? With the AI layers and generative design and all that stuff. But then you go into the VR mode, and I love how you kind of like you paved the way for me, right? so you start with analyzing the design for constructability, for risks, of incurring incidents, and then you go to VR, which is a very good training model right? So you can get that design, you can get it in VR, and put a headset on those workers before they step on the job site, saying, here's where you're going to be working. Here's the potential hazards that you need to pay attention to, and actually simulate some of that stuff for them too. So many studies that talk about how much knowledge transfer you get out of VR rather than traditional training methods. Like when somebody's like either speaking at you or talking at you for an hour with the death about PowerPoints, or even static videos of just like somebody telling you, don't go up 6 feet without being tied off. It's like, okay, yeah, I get that. But showing them where they're going to be working and what hazards they're going to be encountering is a completely different way of kind of framing it, because they're seeing it to scale. Even though it's a virtual world, it still mimics the real world and what hazards they're going to be seeing. And that kind of sticks in the back of their heads a lot more. Add to that with it, computer vision and adding cameras on job sites and actually keeping track. And there's so many tools out there. None of this is revolutionary, by the way, Michael. All of this stuff already exists. This isn't something that's in the future going to happen. These are all solutions that exist today. Computer vision, you can install cameras on the job site and have them monitor like near real time of any potential hazards, anybody that's walking around with like missing PPE, bad postures, working at heights without being tied off, stuff like that you can flag so quickly and get it in front of the safety team that's on the job site, so they can be proactive instead of them, having to walk around and find those hazards.
Right. It's in real time, and I think to your point, it's not revolutionary. It's just finally being adopted and implemented. And it's taken so long to get to that point when, safety procedures may not be being followed correctly. The cameras can catch and give, the safety team or the compliance team, hey, this guy isn't tied up. He's 15 stories in the air. What are we doing? Like, get him down now, or we need to get him tied off correctly because we're not in compliance with our safety standards. Yeah. Right. And it's funny that this is now just becoming a thing. And I guess that's where you come in as the, head of innovation. It's like, guys, this exists. Like, we need to use this stuff. Look how productive and efficient it can be in terms of our project planning and our execution and our strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
And look, I totally get it. I understand that it's overwhelming. There's a lot of things happening in this space, and there's a lot of processes and workflows that are being affected. And that's kind of where my job comes into Haskell, is me trying to position these solutions strategically to the right people at the right job site at the right time to test it out, to make sure that, executive leaderships are seeing the fruits of implementing said technology. And then that would help us kind of start adopting it slowly but surely into more and more projects in order to kind of like harness that full ROI. And I keep saying, like, don't even look at ROI from a pilot project. Pilot project's probably not gonna produce anything that's tangible in terms of ROI, right? But it's gonna showcase that it works, that it's valid, that it's valuable, and we can scale it.
Yeah, and it sounds like it lands on your plate to prioritize your priorities. It seems like, is it safety? Is it ROI? Is it productivity? Is it hitting those lead times? But yeah, to your point, those pilot projects are almost never going to give something. You're not going to get something tangible right away. They take time to develop, especially at the scale that Haskell works, and this. Yeah. But getting those opportunities, it's like, back to the VR point, and obviously probably AR a little bit as well, is super helpful with mapping out what these floor plans and these buildings are going to look like. It's kind of like a flight simulator for construction, which is super cool. But yeah, no, it lands on your plate, and it's like, look how productive and efficient these implementations can be. And I wanted to ask you, this, introducing new tech in a traditional industry can be really challenging, as we've agreed. But what strategies have you found effective in getting that buy-in from the higher ups and the stakeholders to say, Hamzah, yeah, that sounds great. Obviously, it's not going to affect our bottom line for a while, but it sounds like it's something that we need to get on top of now. What have you found most effective in order to getting some of those transitions done as the the main innovation expert over there at Haskell?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to work for a company that has amazing executive leadership that already bought into this, the future of the construction industry and how we're going to get there by standing up a unit like DisruptTech where we have dedicated resources, dedicated budget to test technologies, to stay in the forefront, to develop even technologies that doesn't exist in the market. So I can't speak to that because we already have that. I don't know how to make that happen, but that's the thing here. And so that's the top-down approach, right? So you have leadership that says, we believe that the future is going to be different. We don't know exactly how, but here's resources, here's budget for us to test it, to kind of stay on top of it. But then the other side of this is the bottom-up approach, right? So you need to have the boots on the ground, the people that are actually going to be implementing the tech, to believe in it, to actually see the value, to envision where we're going with this and why we're implementing it, in order for them to actually have that buy-in to make sure that it's successful. And we've done so many pilots, especially early on in my innovation journey, where it's a push methodology. So I have this cool technology, I need you to use it. And it's just like, I'm just pushing it on them. And they're like, sure, you're paying for it. That's fine. Let's give it a try. But
give it a shot.
Right. But they don't have, they're not incentivized. They're not bought in. Right. So they will give it a shot and they will tell you, it doesn't work. Right. Because, your capability trap, every time you implement a new tech, your productivity is going to go down. And they're like, yeah, we're going to go back to our good old ways. But what we found is the best approach is that pull methodology. So what we do as DisrupTech, as the innovation group, we're constantly scanning the horizon. We're looking at all these different cool tech. We're understanding the value prop, their business models, their pricing structures, all the things. And we're logging them in our database and putting them with the right categories, right? What problem statement is it solving for? What's the value prop? How long does it take to kind of onboard and deploy this? And we advertise very, very passively, but a little bit here and there, kind of like internal newsletter. We do some showcase. We talk to people internally. And we're trying to just get it in front of the right people, so they can come to us and say, I have a problem. Do you have a solution for me? And 9 out of 10 times, I have 7.
Yeah, right? You're ready to go. You're planning for this exact thing.
Exactly.
It's like magic.
It's amazing how much more buy-in you get from people when they approach you about a solution that they saw. It's a completely different approach, right? It's not like, hey, I want you to look at this. It's like, wait a minute, I actually saw that somewhere else, whether it's like in the email or in the conference or somebody talked about it. What do you guys know about this? And we're like, let's talk about it. Let's get you in a demo. Let's start implementing it. But that's when you really have that buy-in. And then the last piece of this, I know I'm talking at you for a while here, but we talk top down, bottom up. The last piece of the puzzle is the technology providers, the partners, the tech partners that are actually having all these solutions. If the tool is easy to use, easy to onboard, easy to work with, believe it or not, it grows like wildfire. Like, it's immediately grassroots. Everybody talks to each other, and before we know it, like 17 other people are asking for that solution on their job site. But it really goes back to like how intuitive that technology is, how easy it is to set up, to train on, to use, to continue to update. And does that technology partner have not only the right tool that solves the real problem and pain point, but also how easy it is to use, and have a dedicated customer success team that helps you when you need it most, right? Because especially at that early phase of implementation, people are going to be like crazy. So many questions, so many phone calls, so many emails. And if you don't have that dedicated customer success team, it usually crumbles very quickly.
Yeah, really quickly. But it sounds like in terms of the innovation, you found a way to leverage inevitable pain points, let them come to you with the pull method that you described, and then having solutions ready to go. It's really genius if you think about it, because as the innovation team, you have the foresight to kind of think ahead. What issues are we going to run up? What issues are we going to stumble upon potentially? What solutions exist out there to have in the pipeline? So when the construction managers and the boots on the ground do come and tap on my shoulder and say, hey, we're having problems. I am having pain points in X, Y, and Z. You're like, I'm glad you're here. Let's talk Thursday morning because I have just a solution for you because we thought of this already.
Absolutely. But
And
we also take it a step further, Michael, which is sometimes this doesn't happen a lot. I said, as a nine out of 10 times, I have 7 different solutions that solves for that problem statement. But there's that one time I haven't come across a solution that does this. And that's actually when we switch to developer mode. So actually, like, we host what we call Big Pitch event, which is kind of like a Shark Tank style innovation summit, where we invite all Haskell employees to submit ideas, and we select the top 5, get them in front of the executives to pitch it, and then we get funding to go build that idea. And that's when somebody comes to me and that 10th time where I don't have solutions in the market, they're like, you know what? Let's submit this for Big Pitch. Let's get this in front of the executives and actually see if we can build it. And we've built so many different solutions from scratch because it doesn't exist. Getting ready to bring some of them to market as well.
Wow. So you guys are literally doing like a Shark Tank style pitch event. And if everyone gives the thumbs up, you guys will literally go and develop that internally.
100%. Yeah.
Wow. I don't think I've heard that before. And so you have an engineering team, a software developer.
We don't like necessarily like internal development. We hire like a third party partner
to go and develop it for you.
Develop it, but it's still our IP, so to say.
Fascinating. So yeah, talk about from the ground up. I mean, I don't think I've heard that before in terms of giving everyone an opportunity to voice their opinion. And of course, usually I'm sure these are after a pain point has been identified, what is your solution? How difficult is it? If you don't mind me asking, like, let's say an employee comes and says, we need to develop XYZ software. Is it pretty difficult to get approval and thumbs up from the board and to go and pitch the idea? I mean, what does that process looks like? Just because I'm so curious how that works.
Yeah, there's a timeline, right? So we can't do this ad hoc. We try to kind of constrain it to like between June and like August. This is when we collect ideas, and every idea counts. We collect all ideas. And then we, as the innovation team, we sit down with each idea submitter and map it out, understand the problem statement, understand the workflow, to understand the user personas, and then immediately go to research mode, right? What's out there in the market? A lot of times, again, 9 out of 10 times, I already have 7 solutions based on my database.
Ready to go, yeah.
Right, and that's if it exists, we say, here's the solutions, and we pair them with them. We set, demo calls and get that moving on the direction of a pilot mode. But when it doesn't exist, we have patent attorneys that are also looking to do more extensive research on what is out there in terms of not just products, but patents. Did anybody actually think about this? Is there anything out there like somebody just, you got your patent trolls that are just holding a patent, they're not doing anything with it. When we've come across those sometimes. But once you get to that, and that's kind of like what I said, is like between June and August, and we find those 5 golden ideas that don't exist in the market, that don't have patents holding them up, that are nothing really that we can start going with them. We sit down with those submitters and we develop business plans. We coach them on pitching the idea. We come up with the story, and here's how you're going to pitch it. And you only get like 10 minutes to pitch it. It's not like a long time. And we're not going to do PowerPoints or anything. It's like you get like maybe 2 pictures just to kind of as background, just to kind of as supporting evidence. But we ask our judges, and our judges are our executive leadership. So CEO, COO, we get like somebody from our board of directors, and we tell them like, please select one, right? Don't give me the thumbs up on all of them, because we've got that before. Like, let's do all of them.
Let's do all of them. Yeah, tough crowd.
I don't have the resources to do all of them. Just select one, and we can designate that as the winner. The winner gets a check, gets $10,000 as prize money for them, in addition to whatever funding is required to make that idea come to life. And one example that we love to talk about is Raptor. Raptor is a hardware product that we're building that takes pneumatic pressure testing, which is a very dangerous activity to happen, into a whole other level in terms of safety, in terms of quality. And it's an IoT device that we set up inside the job site and where we're testing the piping, and everybody can evacuate right? And control the testing device remotely through an app. So it's very simple idea like that it's like, why haven't anybody thought of this? It's like, it's stuff like this that, that you see day in and day out. And then there's so many different ideas. Like, we've been doing this for 5 years. So there's other examples, but that's kind of the one that came to mind now.
That's one heck of an initiative. I mean, really, that I am blown away by this idea. And so I guess my next question would be, it gives really a voice to anybody, but let's say they take it all the way to the pitch event and they not only are top 5, but they get selected. Does their role change and they start taking over this project, or do they go back to what they were working on previously and hand it off to somebody else? Because
no, they're going to be involved in the project, but we don't take them out of their role.
Not like a full-time thing.
Right. So they still are involved in the development and the selection of the development team, and throughout the development. And then when it gets to deployment, they're involved in every step of the way, but that doesn't take them out to become,
they're not.
We haven't gotten through that point yet, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're at the crossroad here, or a fork in the road, where it's like, do we take this to become a product to the market and then have a startup around it that we spin off? And then what happens to the idea submitter? Does he become the CEO of that company, or does he
get equity? There's a lot of
we still haven't crossed that road yet, but we're getting there very quickly.
Yeah. That could get complicated. That could get really messy really quick, because it's a good point. Because if it's all of a sudden this great idea comes around and you start to do the startup thing, VCs start knocking on the door. I mean, it becomes something that's quite scalable and that you can take to market. It's like, who owns the IP? The guy whose idea was, or Haskell?
No, we're very clear about that. Haskell owns IP. You get your prize money, and we actually named so if, like, for that specific patent for Raptor, we named the submitter, Gary Weiler, as the inventor on the patent, but the IP still has a Haskell IP. And part of it also is kind of talking about spinoff. Spinoff is a whole other world in its own, right? And it's like, who can control that, and how does it get stood up? So that's something we're marching towards. We just haven't crossed it yet, and we've seen it at a couple of different companies too. So it's not anything new, but we're getting there.
Totally. So I guess I'm wondering now, Hamzah, at this point, in your experience and in your tenure, have you seen any other company doing something like this, have an initiative like this? And how many developments or applications or ideas have actually been applied into your day-to-day operations that have come from this pitch event?
We've seen our peers. We talked to them. We've exchanged notes. So there's a couple of that are doing that. Okay. Maybe not as consistently as we are, because we've been doing it every year. But their initiatives are there, believe it or not. But it may be not as advertised as much as I try to put it out there. As far as impact, we've seen tons of impacts, and so there's ideas that affect only a specific user group within the company, right? So, for example, an idea that was kind of like enhancing a tool that already our process engineers are using, but we added this add-in to it that made them way more efficient, right? And it's like, I'm talking about like something that took them 10 hours is now being done in half an hour. So there's tons of efficiency gains, but it's only within a specific group for a specific type of project within the company, right? And you can't really scale that any further because it's a niche thing, right? So it's very specific to that group.
It's not a one size fits all.
Right. But we have another idea that's like really changed the way that everybody on the job site, how do they order materials? How do they order tools? How do they order rental equipment? So instead of it being like phone calls and emails and ad hoc, Excel spreadsheets here and there about tracking all of that, we built this central platform that we have a central group already that's doing that work. So the central platform just became like our Amazon page, like internally. So people just from the job site, they just go to that page, Blue Diamond, and they just order a backhoe. They order, hard hats, whatever it is. And it gets delivered to the job site, and they have that list of when they ordered it, how long has it been there, when do they need to return it, and all that stuff.
Incredible. And shifting gears a little bit, Hamza, I wanted to go back a little bit towards the beginning again for you personally and ask, obviously, academia, technology, not an issue for you. Where did your construction experience come from? I don't think we covered that. How did you become an expert? I mean, obviously, you own all three, and I'm sure there's more that we haven't even touched on yet. But what about specifically the construction industry, and what's making you so dangerous as a director of innovation, handling all three of these components that have obviously led to a ton of success for you?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to like I got my bachelor's in architectural engineering, which is kind of the crossroad between design, between engineering, between project management. And I loved that program. It's like based out of like Penn State's architectural engineering program. So it's interesting to see the culmination of all these different things come together, and that's kind of what led me to being like an owner's rep, and then working for Saudi Aramco, one of the largest oil companies in the world, kind of managing a lot of these offshore projects. So there's a lot of background that I have in terms of project management and what are the pain points and the communication gaps and all that stuff. And then kind of going to academia, I did my dissertation on how do we enhance construction management education utilizing video games. So I actually designed and created a video game that mimics a job site. So you have like a timeline of activities that are coming at you, and time never stops, right? Because time's always moving. And you need to make sure that you have your equipment, your labor, your materials on site before that activity is scheduled to start. And you kind of just trying to keep the project afloat.
Interesting. So not really like, and I may be way off because I'm not a big video game guy, but kind of like Minecraft, Sims, something like that.
Something like that, more like The Sims, yeah. But you're controlling so many different variables and trying to keep track of the cash flow that you have in a project too, because you don't want to spend time on bringing the labor to the job site if the activity is not going to start in a couple of more weeks.
Sure.
We're going to pay them.
It's kind of fun, and it's like, to your point about construction education. I mean, that's a great way to get people to, video games. People want to win and want to figure out, strategy. I mean, there's a lot to video games. Obviously, it's more and more information coming out about that as of late. But yeah, strategizing, figuring out a way to like get this construction project done in the most successful and efficient way possible in a video game kind of interface. It's genius. I mean, is that game still around? I mean, what is it floating around out there somewhere?
It's not, no, unfortunately not. That kind of stopped with my dissertation because I graduated. I'm like, all right, I'm out.
I'm done. Yeah, forget it.
Going back to academia is I wanted to see what else is out there. But the more I saw like futuristic things, and yes, there were cool technologies that are coming, but they weren't like actionable. They weren't like something that's, that I can use today. So that's kind of what brought me back to the industry, because I was trying to implement a lot of these awesome tools that we were building back then.
Yeah, and it does, like, to our point from 30 minutes ago, it does make for the perfect storm. I mean, technology can play such a wonderful role in construction. There's so much opportunity. The capabilities are now there. I mean, I bet you're just thrilled because these things have become more mainstream as opposed to just kind of inklings or ideas like they were the last decade, especially when you're literally responsible for innovative processes and optimizing how you do business. I mean, it's like prime time for it. So, really fantastic timing for you on your part, for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, Hamza. So looking back, what have been some of the more rewarding projects or achievements in your career? Obviously, innovation is such a fantastic part of the company to be part of, because you're really leaving a mark and you're improving the quality of work life, personal life for those who work at Haskell. Can you share a specific or particular moment that stood out as a valuable learning experience or a really rewarding project that you implemented in your time there?
I mean, yeah. So we have, when I started at Haskell, I started at the VDC kind of like BIM group, where you're doing coordination, you're doing 4D sequencing, you're doing a lot of different things that has to do with the model per se, right? And one of the first projects that we actually were piloting drones back in 2017 was like at the hype of it. A huge project, and it was like a 100-acre job site. And we're just flying this drone on a weekly basis, right? We train the superintendent, and we just, here's what to do. You press this button and it goes up and it does its thing and it comes back, change its battery and all that stuff, right? And we kept getting that data and we kept processing the data. And I was trying to find so many valuable things to do, right? So I was like overlaying the foundations on top of the drone imagery. And we could immediately see, like 2 of the foundations that they laid out were like slightly off because they laid it out as 4x4, which is like supposed to be 5x5. Not a big deal, right? It's like, oh yeah, we were referring to an older drawing. So thanks for letting us know. It wasn't that big a deal. It all comes down to like, there was a couple of other use cases where it's like there was like conduits that were being laid out in the wrong place rather than where they were supposed to be after the coordination meeting. So we had to move that. But it all really came to fruition when we got a change order from the soil subcontractor saying, yeah, we had to move more dirt than what's in our scope, pay me. And it was a big change order. And the project manager looked at me and is like, hey, we've been flying the drone for the past 8 months. Do you have anything? Because we couldn't verify the numbers that he was telling us, right? Because the only way to keep track of earthwork is trucks in and out, right? Or like, the word of mouth, that's what they said. And this project was so contained that there were no trucks going in and out. We were just moving dirt from one side and dumping it into the other. And boy, oh boy, was I excited that day. I'm like, yes, we have data. And we go and I flipped through them and I created this extensive report that showed, yes, this actual subcontractor had to excavate more work than it's in their scope of work, but it's this much, not this much. And it just ended up saving us tons of money. It was an exciting opportunity to showcase what technologies can do. Yeah.
What technology can do and those insights into the data, right? I mean, data is as valuable, and I say this all the time on the show. The listeners are probably like, yeah, Michael, we know you think that, but data is as valuable as oil, gold, you name your commodity. The data now, look what it's doing for you.
100%. Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, when I share this story with other project managers, they're like, well, I have a change order. Can you take a look at it? And I'm like, well, have you been collecting any data? They're like, no.
Well, there's your first problem. Collect the data.
Right.
Own the data. It's very, very important. It's very, very valuable. I assure you it is.
100%.
For those looking to bring technology into traditional fields like construction, what advice would you offer? We've gone over a lot today in terms of the innovation, the importance of technology in this space, but are there any specific skills or mindsets you think are crucial for those who are looking to follow a similar career path to that you've taken?
Don't be afraid of failures. That's my biggest spiel that I mention everywhere. You cannot innovate without failing. It's as simple as that. So the more you create that culture of like, yes, it's okay to fail. It's okay to try new things and see if it works or not. The more you're going to continue to iterate to find the right way to do things. So that would be my only advice is like, keep thinking outside the box. And if it fails, so what? Learn from it and try again.
Yeah. Try new things, leave the comfort zone, try to, that's what innovation's all about, right? Is 100%. Going where others have not yet kind of gone and implementing strategies that are new and effective. But no, I agree entirely. I don't think anyone can really disagree with you on that. I mean, name your inspirational quote about it being okay to fail from any successful individual. But it's a great point because you want to learn, you want your ceiling to get higher and higher. And through failure is as funny as it sounds, even though we all know it to be true, is really the best way to do it. Because if you're failing, you're trying new things.
Right.
You can fail 99 times in a row, but that 100th success could be the difference in major outcomes in a project, a career, your trajectory as a person. I mean, it's really important.
And that's the problem, is that people see that 100th time, that success. Everybody wants to talk about that, but they don't see the 99 failures before it.
Right. I mean, didn't Einstein fail like 10,000 times, or Edison failed like 10,000 times to come up with the light bulb? I mean, both of them probably, but
100%. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's true. And if those guys can fail, and I assure you, they're both exponentially smarter than me by a lot, then I'm not afraid to fail either. It's a good point and something we hear a lot, but it's a good reminder because you got to try new stuff. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. It's super important. Take it from Hamzah himself. He knows what he's talking about, right?
I learned from a lot of people. I'm not on my own. So one of the like Thomas Edison is one of the best examples, and I mentioned that at the beginning of my TED talk as well. Is like ideas, right? Is like failure is what prompts innovation, but also talking about like creating a culture of innovation, a good culture, and I go back to Daniel Coyle in his book The Culture Code, which talks about creating psychological safety and making sure people are safe in their environment. Like that's the first barrier you're going to get when you try new things. Is like, are you trying to replace my job? Are you trying to fire me? Are you trying to automate my job? Like, no, you have to create that psychological safety first. People need to understand that this isn't replacing their jobs. This is coming to enhance your job, right?
Optimize you as a worker.
Right. And then you paint that vision of why do we even need to do that, right? And how does it make your job better? That's what everybody cares about, Michael. Not everybody cares about the company or the environment or the industry. What's in it for me, right? What do I get out of this?
No, it's a great point because I mean, and this is something I mention a lot too, specifically pertaining to AI now, because that's a hot topic. It's very mainstream and a hot topic of discussion in the business world. Oh, I'm very worried AI will replace me. It's like, no, but to your point, Hamzah, those who utilize AI will replace those who refuse to adopt it and those who continue to be hesitant and resistant towards it. 100%. Because it's not gearing up to replace you. It's optimizing you as an employee, a worker, whatever it is that you do. If it can alleviate, X amount of hours of, grunt work per week, look how much more productive you can be in other things that may matter a little bit more. Right. How much more productive can you be with these tools across a year? How much more can you get done? So those who harness and utilize and are non-resistant to it are going to be the ones replacing those who continue to say, no, I don't want to use these tools. I want to continue conducting business on pen and paper over the phone, for example.
It doesn't affect me or what I do, right? We see that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry I didn't get to ask you more about your TED Talk. I didn't know that you did a TED Talk. I'm now curious. I don't think I can let you go without at least inquiring what you discussed. I'm sure there were similarities in what we discussed today, but
very much so.
What did that look like?
It was about that. It was about innovation and failure. And like the title is, failure is not an option; it's a necessity. And it talks about how you can't get to innovation. You can't get to that big success story without having all those failures and learning from them, right? It's like no success is an overnight success. Everything comes from hundreds and hundreds of failures before that you learn. That's the key. The key is that you fail, you learn, you try again. You don't just fail and say, yes, Hamzah said, go fail, and that's it, and close the book.
Yeah, don't go hit the bench. You got to utilize what you learned and go and try something else, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm glad I asked you that last question then, because it seemed like you had a pretty well thought out answer on deck here to share with us.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then I culminated all of that in Paperless Builders, the why, what, and how of construction technology. So go check that book out. It's available on Amazon these days.
Fantastic. No, I don't think I have a choice at this point. I certainly will. And Hamzah, with that being said, thank you so much. This has been invaluable. Really, really enjoy the insights that you've shared with us. The innovation aspect alone is just tremendous. I think there needs to be more of what you're doing, not in just the construction industry, but across the board with this very unique approach to conducting business, as well as how you carry yourself as an individual. I wish we had 3 more hours to dive deeper into everything that you're doing. But for the sake of time, this has been just tremendous. And I can't thank you enough for joining us today on the Results Loading podcast.
Absolutely. No, thanks for having me. And I enjoyed the conversation. Always excited to talk with innovative minds like you.
Excellent. Well, I can only hope to be a fraction of as innovative as you are, but I'll keep you posted on my progress, and I'll continue failing and learning from them. So
Awesome.
thanks again.
Thank you, Michael.